Before I take you to the Neelkanth Temple in Kalinjar Fort, it is important to understand the well known story of Samudra Manthan. I'm sure all of you know about it, so I will just recap it briefly. Samudra Manthan, or churning of the sea, refers to that very famous episode when the sage Durvasa gave a garland to Lord Indra. Lord Indra put it on the neck of his elephant Eravat. Eravat, irritated by the smell and the insects that the garland was attracting, allegedly, threw it off its neck. This enraged the sage Durvasa, who cursed the gods that they would lose their power. And not only their power, but that the gods would be bereft of their energies, fortunes, and strength. Now, after the gods did lose their fortune and power and strength, they went to Lord Vishnu, who advised the Devas that they had to get the elixir that was at the bottom of the sea, known as the Shir Sagar, and that only this milky ocean can restore their lost power and strength. Since it was impossible for the gods to do it alone, they asked the Asurs to join them, and they formed an alliance to bring out the nectar of immortality from under the sea. It was an elaborate exercise, as you can see from this frieze of the Samudra Manthan, which is in the Neelkanth Temple. They used the mountain Mandara as the churning rod, and the snake god Vasuki was used as the churning rope. The Asuras demanded to hold the head of the snake, while the Devas agreed to hold the tail. Mount Mandara began to sink when it was placed in the ocean. After learning this, after hearing that this was happening, Lord Vishnu took the form of Kurma turtle and took Mount Mandara on his back to offer it support so that the churning could happen with ease. The fumes that were emitted by the snake god Vasuki poisoned the Asuras, but despite this, the Asuras and the Devas pulled the snake back and forth, causing the mountain to rotate, which in turn churned the ocean. This is very like the way we churn buttermilk. During the churning, many things came out of the ocean, such as the wish granting cow Kamdhenu, a seven headed elephant named Ucheshravas, as well as 14 ratnas or gems, the Parijat tree, which blossoms and is taken to heaven by the god, another tree that is called Varuni, and also the goddess of wealth Lakshmi, who chose to marry Lord Vishnu. Finally, Dhanvantari, the divine physician, also emerged holding the pot of nectar. Now, this bit of this nectar fell on Haridwar, Ujjain, Nasik, Prayagraj, which is where the Kumbh Mela is held. Now, the pot was seized by the Asurs. So Lord Vishnu disguised himself as a beautiful woman Mohini and distracted the Asurs and said that she would distribute the nectar equally between the gods and the demons, and then Mohini served the gods with the nectar first. Among the many things that emerged from the ocean during the churning was a lethal poison called hala hala. Now, this poison was so dreadful and was so very toxic that it could end up destroying entire creation. Fearing this, the gods then approached Lord Shiva to save the world from being destroyed. Lord Shiva decided to consume this poison. As soon as he drank the hala hala, goddess Parvati placed her hand on Lord Shiva's throat in order to prevent the poison from spreading into his body. And his throat turned blue, which is why he is called Neelkanth. I bow to Neelkanth, who has 10 arms, 3 eyes, is sky clad and lord of the directions, dark eyed and adorned by with poison. It's a beautiful place. Kalinjar Fort is one of the gems of the country. It lies in the Banda district of Bundelkhand and it was built by the Chandela rulers between the 9th to 13th century. Its name Kalinjar means destroyer of times. The entrance to the temple is on one side. There are many directions giving, so you will not have any problem once you enter the fort to reach the temple. This is a grand gateway which has been built and which leads to the temple. The temple is on a very lower level and there are 165 steps which lead to it. It's quite a strenuous task. I visited twice and both times unfortunately it was in the summers, so the sun was beating on our heads, but anyway that doesn't deter anybody who is determined to visit it. I went along with many other friends who were with me on this trip, and there were many other devotees along with me. Now the descent is easy, and the minute you see the Yajna Mandap, which looks to me like a Grecian temple, you are filled with lots of strength and vigor to go down. And as you can see, I am pretty excited to go down, but then I love exploring, and for me, any place of worship has a special spiritual significance because of the energy there. So we went down, and as I said, you can see the Grecian temple, or what looks like a Grecian temple to me. Of course, it's not a Grecian temple, it's the Yagna Mandap of the Neelkanth Temple. At one point of time, there must have been a roof here, but now it is no longer there. All along, there are carvings, beautiful carvings of Shivaling. You can see this is the Ekmukhi Shivaling. It's just beautiful. So you can, when you're walking down, you can keep stopping and looking at the small altars and the temples which are made on the way, the carvings. They're just breathtaking, and the journey down the stairs, and even when you're coming up, you can explore one side when you're going down and the other side when you're coming up. Both of them are a treasure house of rock cut sculpture. Now, one of the most beautiful sculptures there is, of course, Lord Ganesh, who is made on the lintel of a doorway that goes down to the village. This fort has 7 gateways on one side and 2 on the other. Of course, we entered from the one that is motorable today, but villagers come up the steps from this Ganesh gateway. And this is a sketch that was made in 1845 by Lieutenant Macy, who has written a book on the antiquities of Kalinjar, which I have consulted. In fact, I've consulted many books on Kalinjar, written by Macy, by Führer, by Cunningham, by Shri Vijay Kumar, Professor Ali Nadeem Ridavi, as well as accounts of travelers who have come here. And this Ganesha statue is just adorable for me. I have seen many statues of Lord Ganesh. I have lived in Pune and Maharashtra for a long time, but this is the most adorable statue. And I am just going to give you time to look at it and admire it. It's there, as I said, on the lintel of the doorway. You can see the grill at the back. The other notable sculptures is, of course, the Nandi. You will find the Nandi wherever there is Lord Shiva. Then there are beautiful sculptures of the Dwarpals, of the various forms of Lord Shiva, of ascetics, and Lord Hanuman. Now, this is a very beautiful sculpture of a sleeping Hanuman. And then you come down and you see the Yagna Mandap up close. All of this is built of the local stone, the basalt hills. This and the Vindhyas is one of the oldest rock formations in the world. You can see these beautiful carvings on the top of the columns. The columns themselves are exquisitely carved. I have taken this photograph from the top. It's an octagonal mandap, but of course it is supported by a square shape. And just in front you can see the parapet of the fort itself. The fort is one of those very, very strong forts. All along the side of the mountain as you come down, there are small temples, small altars, all of which have carving. This is one of the few forts that resisted the attack of Mahmud Ghazni. And please make sure that you wear walking shoes when you come down. And stop to enjoy the carvings and the sculpture all along the way. And the first sight of the temple as you come down the gate, it's amazing. Stand and savor that. Here you can see the various avatars of Lord Vishnu. Then there are these small votive temples cut into the rock face and various carvings of Lord Shiva. This is Kali, and all of them are numbered. This is what was once a standing statue of Lord Ganesh that Parijat has broken. You can see the size from just its feet that are kept here. This is the face of the statue, and it's kept inside in one of the side chambers where there are many other statues kept. It must also have been standing at one point of time, either where it is kept now or in some other position. The frieze with the carving of the Samudra Manthan is also kept inside this side chamber, and this is a sketch that was made by Macy in 1845. You can compare it with what it is today. Part of it is where the horse has been hidden, and you can see the exquisite carvings on the columns of that temple. As you enter the temple, of course, you have the river goddesses to welcome you, and then when you go inside, you see various other images and the blue granite Shivaling. As I mentioned earlier, this Shivaling is always moist. There is always water inside this cave. This cave could have originally been a painted cave or rock shelter, which was turned into a temple by the Chandelas. Of course, the Shivaling is very ancient and would have been there from times immemorial. But the Yagna Mandap and the doorway and the statues and the images that have been carved during the reign of the Chandelas. There are some sculptures and rock cut sculptures in Kalinjar which date back to the 5th century AD, that is to the Gupta era, and some of them to the reign of the Chandelas. This Shivaling itself is majestic, and people who come there to pray come there with their wishes to be granted. May Lord Shiv hear everybody's legitimate supplications. And once you come out of the temple, to your right, there is a small kund, and in that kund is one of the most spectacular rock cut statues of of Lord Shiv as Kal Bhairav. It is 24 feet high and 17 feet wide and has 18 arms and, of course, the skull garland. I climbed up to the wall or the parapet of the fort wall so that I could get a good look at the temple as well as at the statue itself. Then we walked out of the door near the Kal Bhairav and saw that there were rock shelters even outside. One of them, as you can see, had somebody living in it. Now these are all ancient rock shelters and rock formations. Then we came back and walked up the stairs to the Sarovar. This Sarovar is said to be sacred. You can go up there, and the water over there is said to hide treasures that were left there by the Chandelas. I stood there near the water. Of course, for me, the treasure was spiritual, because in any place of religious worship that you go to, you can feel the energy of the worshippers, and you close your eyes and feel the peace.